Hey everybody, this is Fritz. Just doing a little video of cooking Nigerian beef stew. My friend Jackie supplied me with a recipe, and I generally love her recipes because they're simple enough for me, but provide a wonderful amount of flavor for what's in the package. So uh, I realized when I originally did the video, it was a long video, so I've sped this up 4x just to kind of get through it. Um, uh, the prep work is the bulk of the work. In this case, it's a very tomato-based stew, or a sauce in my case. So I started out with 5 Roma tomatoes, getting these diced up. I probably didn't have to go this far into the dicing because I'm using a food processor and a later thing, but I'm just getting things prepped. One way or the other, it turned out okay. And so that was the 5 Romas. It said plum tomatoes in the recipe, so it was a little, I didn't know what that meant, so I just stuck with Romas. And Jackie also used Romas, so I think that was pretty good. Uh, Great red peppers at the store. You know, we're at a bit of a seasonal break where we're not having a lot of options, and for whatever reason, these peppers, I don't know if they're hothouse or whatever, gorgeous, gorgeous smell, uh, really firm flesh, which was fantastic, and consequently really helped the stew. As we were comparing notes afterwards, I think that maybe, although there's not a prevalent flavor of pepper, I think I lucked out because it really added to the color of the sauce. Uh, uh, or in this case, stew. I'm going to say sauce a lot because that's the consistency I got out of this. Okay, so 2 big peppers, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm constantly reading the instructions and I still manage to get them wrong, which I'm impressed by. Uh, Okay, dot, 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 boom, 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 boom. Okay, why did that take so long compared to the tomatoes? No idea. Great. Okay, here comes the purple onion. It's very specific about a purple onion, I think. I'm going to look through there. Red onion, excuse me, red onion. I'm not sure why it did that, but I really like the way it cooked up. So, when a good onion starts going, there's a translucence, which I am a huge fan of because it's not quite caramelized, but it brings out a lot of flavor. And in this recipe, they have you split the onion and cut it 2 ways. So one side's chopped and the other one's sliced. And I was frankly I probably overdid it with my management on the chop side. I was trying to pull out the cores and so forth, and honestly, I'm sure the food processor would have just done a fine job. But it was neat because they said set aside the sliced pieces for another cooking portion. Okay. The original recipe called for 2 habanero. I didn't have any at the store, so I took serranos and I kept the seeds. And these were beautiful serranos too. You notice there's like no brown interiors, so I was like, shoot, I'll take all the seeds then, just to give it some heat. I've been having some problems with serranos. It's like the old jalapeno rule. Some are hot, some are not, and these turned out to be just right. I'm drooling even thinking of them. They're just so warm and wonderful. 6 cloves of garlic. God, this is some old garlic. It was still fine on the inside, only had one with a little rot problem, but cleaning them is just a burden sometimes. I've seen people use like just shaking them in a box, but the skin was as thick as armor. So it just takes a while for me to clean them down. I question about the amount of garlic that was in this six could have been a little bit pungent. Like I don't know about you guys, but I get horrible gas with the overdose of garlic. I mean, I love garlic. It tastes great. It makes everything fragrant. But I don't know if it's some kind of fibrousness or the oils in it. Who knows? But oh boy, horrible. And this was no exception. Because I know you guys wanted to hear about my gastroenterology. Anyway, there's a rotten one. That was So it was really probably just 5 1/4 cloves. Uh, anyway, but I would argue the argument I was having with myself is like, do I really need six? I mean, that's what the recipe calls for, which is unusual for that amount. Usually people just say like 2 cloves, and I would put in six, but at 6 cloves, I was like, I'll just stick with six because that seems like a heck of a lot of garlic. And you know what? Couldn't taste it. I mean, there was a slight aromatic nature to the sauce in the end. Okay, here we go. My favorite kitchen toy, the Cuisinart massive Mix Master, and it is such an awesome device. But I haven't used it in like a year, so I'm all of a sudden I can't remember how to get the thing to work and the hood and the lockdown. So there was some confusion. Uh, so I figured it had to be assembled and then I could lock it into place. Okay, and then I can take off the lid. All right, so here we go. Get that done, lock that in place. And it says the instructions say blend until smooth, or puree until smooth. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's the second question I had for Jackie. Paste. So when you're making a nice tomato sauce, like or spaghetti sauce, paste is a great way to thicken it up and give it a lot of substance to make it not a marinara. And this one called for a considerable amount, 12 ounces, which is hysterically heavy to me. So I think next time I would do this with 6 ounces. It didn't really have to be this profound. That being said, as the days go by, this gets better and better. So, teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of pepper. This piece doesn't really have tons to spice wise. So there's going to be a second mix where I use the sliced uh, onions, and that's where the spices end up going. So I'm starting to pull all that stuff out. So we have Hungarian paprika, debatable if it's very flavorful, and I got some curry powder, which is also debatable about its flavorfulness, and then fresh rosemary from the garden, and a couple of bouillon blocks. Okay, so here we start the process. We're going to do mix one. I was supposed to use a cup of vegetable oil, which would have been just a huge amount. And I ended up just doing a little splash, maybe a tablespoon of olive oil, which I thought was pretty good. But it may have impaired the cooking time. Like this was only supposed to take a couple of minutes. So in goes one of the tomatoes finally chopped up. In goes the uh, onions, and they're like, cook that until it becomes fragrant. I'm like, okay. And I was supposed to be in this cup of oil? I don't think so. It would have been a mess. But I'm dutifully letting it cook down. Again, olive oil might not have been the smart choice there. But it eventually gets where it needs to go. So I'm like, okay, great. Get the goop ready. So see, now I can't take the dang head off. And I'm like, now what have I done? And I'm sitting there and I just cannot figure this out. And I got to look at the mechanism, get it all squared away, and oh, it was only like this partial thing where you only move it half lock and then it pops off. I'm like, what? I don't remember that being that complicated. But God bless Cuisinart, they make a great device for cutting, chopping, and stuff. The drop-in head is really great with carrots and stuff. It's just a lot of fun. All right, here we go. Am I putting the okay? So the beef in the beef stew is supposed to be flank steak, and it's only supposed to be cut into strips. I just used what do you call it? Like cubes, like cubed meat. It's like the bottom end of the quality of meat, and it was fine. I mean, it would have been nicer with a nicer quality meat. That first thing that went in, that fresh rosemary from the garden, which was super fragrant, really lovely flavor. The more it sits, the better it is. So I'm just showing off the different things: curry powder, the paprika, and then two beef bouillon cubes, which I questioned, but I think it was the salt and flavoring that did it. I considered replacing it with stock, which might have been nice, the stock would have added more fluid, and I think it would have turned it more into a marinara versus a really kind of heavy sauces, which kind of came out of it. Still picking through that rosemary. It was nice. It was just so smelly and delicious because it's fresh from the garden. So letting that cook up. So they're like, oh, don't stop or add anything else until that's all browned and the onions are translucent. So clean as you go. So I just want to keep ahead of the mess as much as possible. 2 hours of prep, 10 minutes of eating, and another hour of cleaning. And this was only like one pot, but like to clean the Cuisinart, that's a bit of a headache. It's all hand cleaning, of course. You got to take it all the parts apart to do it. So that's a bit of a pain. So there's the stuff. Very proud of that. Smells good, looks good. I had asked Jackie, I'm like, I wonder if they put the red peppers in here to make everything look red since it's not a bell pepper tasting kind of thing. She didn't think so, but now I'm starting to wonder if it's a chef's trick to make sauce look fiery red. Is put a red pepper in there, red bell pepper. My God, it looks bright. It is like almost comically bright, and it doesn't affect the flavor as far as I can tell. All right, so this is a boring bit. Now I'm starting to clean up and why that's cooking. It's only supposed to be 10 minutes. You bring it to a boil and then let it turn it back to simmer for 10 minutes. And it's so thick that a boiling comes and it pops like lava and sprays everywhere. So that was a bit of a challenge. Again, I think a lighter one would have been easier. That's my wife. She's just checking in and going like, hey, wait a second. You might need to consider what you're doing here, which was a good catch because this is the first time for this kind of thing for me. So I don't know, emphatically telling something with piano fingers there. Not really quite sure what that is. This gets a little long and I apologize. I'm just kind of finishing up the video. So what I wanted to do is make it with rice, but I thought, oh, why not do it with cauliflower rice? So I have these packets from a friend who didn't want them, and they didn't turn out great. So I wasn't a huge fan. And there's the cauliflower rice. It kind of was a mashed up cauliflower in a bag. You add water and a tiny bit of oil and just swirl it around. And it only takes 2 seconds. So I was way ahead. And, a little bit of oil. Anyway, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, maybe there's better choices or better ways to do it, but it turned out kind of like a mealy consistency and the flavor was not clean. But the sauce was so good, it completely covered that. And so it was just nice to have like a vegetable with the meal instead of straight up carbs. I served it with a scoop of the cauliflower, a big thing of the sauce, the stew, and a chunk of bread. And it was filling. So I am closing in on the end here and treat myself to the completion drink. I should be showing up with a glass of wine. There you go. Pinot Grigio. Probably not what's supposed to go with this, but that's the whole show. Thank you.